I lived 34 years not knowing my mother had been secretly listening to me since I was 8. If you've ever discovered a dark truth about someone you trusted, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you're ready to hear how I shattered the illusion of love that was really a cage built by my own mother. My name is Olivia. I'm 34, a single mom to a 4-year-old named Ella, and up until a month ago I truly believed my mother Judith was just a little overbearing. Sure, she was opinionated, emotionally withholding, and passive-aggressive in that perfectly polished, I'm just worried about you way. But she loved me, right? That's what I thought. What else is a daughter supposed to believe? It started with a box of old things she found while cleaning the attic. She dropped it off one afternoon, uninvited as usual, and hovered just long enough to comment on the dishes in my sink, Ella's mismatched socks, and the fact that I still haven't found a good man yet. Inside the box was a baby monitor, one of those old school ones with a bulky white receiver and a blinking red light. It still works, she said. Thought it might help with Ella at night. I almost threw it away, honestly. I'd bought a newer app-connected one already. But I plugged it in out of curiosity. That night I left the receiver on in the living room while Ella slept. Just background noise. Until around 11 p.m. when I noticed the red light, the one that blinked when there was sound, was solid. I leaned in. Static, then voices. Not just voices, my voice. It wasn't live. It was recorded. A conversation, no multiple conversations from different times, different ages. I heard myself at 16 crying about a boy. I heard a call I'd made to my college roommate the night Dad left. I even heard a session with my therapist from when I was 24 and battling postpartum depression. I froze. There's no logical explanation for why a baby monitor would contain years-old recordings, unless... I checked the base. Beneath a flimsy panel was a micro SD card. My hands were shaking. I plugged it into my laptop. The folder was titled Olivia, Archive. There were subfolders by year. By year, hundreds of hours of audio, every argument I had with a boyfriend, private conversations with my daughter, phone calls, therapy sessions, some labeled by topic, others by date. I threw up in the kitchen sink. I didn't want to believe what my body already knew. This wasn't just old files. This was surveillance, and the only person who could have done this was my mother. The pit in my stomach deepened when I opened one of the audio files from just 2 months ago, me talking on the phone to my friend Chloe, venting about how my mom had once again guilt-tripped me into canceling a weekend with Ella's father. I looked at the date. It was after I'd told my mother not to come over anymore without asking. She had still been listening. It got worse. I checked the properties of the files. Remote access was enabled. I didn't understand the tech exactly, but I saw what I needed to see: a linked Apple ID. One I recognized. JudithJP64AICloud.com, my mother's iPad, her damn iPad. She was still logging in. I went still. My body froze, but my mind started spinning. She'd been listening to me not just when I was a kid, but as an adult. Through my most painful moments, my most private breakdowns. She hadn't just raised me. She'd watched me like a specimen, cataloged me, interpreted me, and she'd used it all. Suddenly, so many confusing things clicked into place. The time my high school boyfriend dumped me out of nowhere, after a fight with my mom. The college roommate who cut me off and told mutual friends I was paranoid and manipulative. The child custody mediator who brought up quotes from private text messages I never shared publicly, ones I had read aloud in my apartment. The last boyfriend, Jason, who said he couldn't handle how emotionally chaotic I was, words I'd only ever used with my therapist. Had she shared this stuff, used it against me, framed me as unstable? It suddenly wasn't just creepy, it was criminal. I checked the monitor again. I unplugged it. I put the SD card back in. I packed it all in a Ziploc bag like evidence. My hands were trembling as I typed a message to my friend Rachel, who works in cybersecurity. I needed help. I needed to know how much she knew, how deep it went. But most of all, I needed to know why. Why would my own mother track me for decades? What was she trying to prove or prevent? I was raised to believe that she was the rock of our family, that Dad, distant, absent, moody, had worn her down, that I should be grateful she kept it all together. But now I wondered, what if he left because he found out? What if I never had a chance to become my own person because she never allowed me to be unwatched? And now I had a daughter. Was Ella next? No, I couldn't let that happen. I had to confront her, but first I had to get the whole picture, so I did what I never imagined I'd do. I logged into the baby monitor app on my mom's iCloud using the password she used for everything since I was 13. Perfectionist 64. What I found made my blood run cold. She wasn't just watching me. She had folders on my daughter. My mother wasn't just spying on me. She had begun recording my daughter and editing the tapes. If you're a mother and you'd go to war to protect your child, drop A in the comments. And hit that like button if you believe some secrets, even family ones, deserve to be exposed. I don't remember breathing as I clicked the folder labeled Ella. I think part of me hoped it was a mistake, that the name would refer to something else. Maybe an old friend, maybe even a pet. But no, inside were 26 audio files, all time-stamped, all titled things like Ella tantrum, prayers, Ella bedtime, anxiety, Olivia yelling background, custody concern sample. That last one made my skin crawl. I clicked play. At first, all I heard was normal parenting stuff. Ella crying because she didn't want to go to bed. Me telling her it's okay that I'm right outside. My voice sounded tired, but calm. Then I heard the edited version. The second clip stripped out all my gentle tones. It started mid-cry and cut in my voice saying, "Stop screaming, Ella, I swear to God." Only I never said that, not like that. It was stitched together, spliced. I knew my own voice. I knew my own temper. And I knew exactly how Judith thought I sounded when I lost control. I clicked another file. This time it was labeled Olivia Unstable, Therapist Call. It was a recording of a phone session with Dr. Harris, my therapist, from when I was drowning in postpartum depression. I had taken the call in my bedroom, door closed, white noise machine on, thinking I was safe. But of course I wasn't. Judith had captured the whole thing. And the file had been cut, edited, the parts where I acknowledged my progress, my support system gone. Instead, it looped phrases like, "I feel like I'm failing. I don't trust myself with Ella sometimes." Out of context, it sounded terrifying, neglectful, dangerous, like I didn't deserve to raise my daughter. I couldn't stop shaking. My mother hadn't just watched me. She had built a case against me, quietly, methodically, while smiling across the dinner table and dropping off frozen lasagnas. I thought about the custody review last fall. The judge had questioned whether I had adequate emotional stability and mentioned concerning unofficial reports that had surfaced. I thought it was just bureaucracy, a clerical thing. Now I knew. She'd sent them this, or something like it, and she'd done it in secret, maybe anonymously. Maybe through one of her connections on the Family Services Board where she still volunteered. All this time I thought I was paranoid. Turns out I was just being hunted. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was racing, my chest hurt. I ran to Ella's room and found her fast asleep, curled up with her stuffed rabbit thumb in her mouth. And that's when it hit me, she'd done this to me too. My whole childhood made sense now. The shame, the fear, the inability to trust my own instincts. I'd grown up with a woman who had wired my house for obedience and called it parenting. When I was 12, I told a teacher that my mom punished me for being too emotional. She pulled me out of school for 2 weeks and homeschooled me instead. When I was 15, she gave me a necklace with a GPS chip in it, said it was for safety. When I was 20, she helped me clean out an old laptop after a bad breakup, and somehow my entire email archive disappeared. Now I saw the pattern: control masked as care, surveillance disguised as love. I sat on the edge of Ella's bed, covering my mouth so I wouldn't wake her as I sobbed. My daughter wasn't just at risk of being recorded, she was at risk of being rewritten, reinterpreted, reduced to clips and splices and sound bites. The same way I had been. And I realized something even darker. My mother wasn't doing this because she was curious. She wasn't doing it because she loved me. She was doing it because she needed the story. The story where I was unwell, dramatic, dangerous even. So she could be the hero, the rescuer, the suffering matriarch who held everything together. I thought about calling the police. But what would I say? My mother is secretly recording my home and editing my life into evidence. Would they believe me? Would they help me? Or would I just look like the exact person Judith had been portraying me as all along? Unstable, overdramatic, paranoid. I needed proof, more proof, something I could show a court, something undeniable. So I went into full investigator mode. First, I called Rachel, my cybersecurity friend, and begged her to help me trace the cloud account. She agreed, though. She sounded scared for me. Then I bought a new nanny cam but reversed the function. I pointed it at the baby monitor. If Judith logged in, I'd catch it. I also called my lawyer. Off the record, I said, "What would it take to file a restraining order against a family member?" He hesitated. "You're talking about your mother." "Yeah," I said quietly, "and she's been monitoring me for years." There was silence on the line. Then he said, "I'll help you. But Olivia, Be ready for this to blow up your entire family. I was ready, because Judith had already blown me up. Now it was my turn. I thought the worst part was finding out my mother had been spying on me. I was wrong. The worst part was realizing she may have done the same to my father right up until the day he died. If you've ever uncovered a family secret so big, it made you question everything, comment below. And hit subscribe if you're ready to follow the trail of lies straight into the heart of this nightmare. I didn't sleep after discovering the Ella folder. I stayed up sitting on the cold tile floor in the hallway between my daughter's room and mine like some kind of guardian. Like I could intercept the surveillance with my body if I had to. I kept hearing the clips. My voice sliced into something I didn't recognize. Ella's sobs taken out of context and repackaged as evidence. My mother's voice playing God behind the curtain. Rachel called me at 6:17 a.m. I stayed up all night going through the data logs, she said, her voice tight. You were right. Judith didn't just connect to your monitor remotely. She's been syncing backups for years across multiple devices. I think she had access to your cloud too. I didn't know what to say. Olivia, this is not just creepy. It's premeditated, obsessive, and she hesitated. Possibly illegal. Possibly, I whispered. Rachel sighed. She's your mother. Technically, if she installed some of this stuff before you were 18, and if she owned the property at the time, it gets murky. But now Ella's involved. You're an adult. It's criminal. What if she already shared it with CPS or a court? If she altered the content, Rachel said slowly, and passed it off as real, that's evidence tampering. That's felony level. But you'd need a lawyer who understands tech forensics to prove it. I wrote everything down. My mind was numb but sharp like a survival reflex. Then Rachel paused. Liv, you should know something else. There are logs from 6 years ago synced to a device I couldn't ID at first. But when I cross-checked it with iCloud backups, it matched a laptop registered to a man named Michael Caro. I froze. That was my dad, my father, the man who died 6 years ago of a heart attack in his sleep. No autopsy, no real questions. He'd just died, quietly, neatly. You think she was monitoring him too, I asked. Rachel didn't answer right away. There's audio files, labeled things like Mike Rage, Mike Threats, Mike Breakdown 2015. I haven't listened. Do you want me to send them? Yes and no. Every cell in my body screamed to know and to stay in the dark. But I said yes. The first file arrived. I braced myself. I hit play. What I heard was haunting. My father's voice weary, cracking, saying, Judith, this has to stop. You're not well. You record people. You manipulate them. You twist things. Her response was icy. You always accuse me of being the problem when you lose control. I don't lose control, he said. You push people until they break. I've watched what you're doing to Olivia. I've seen the way she looks at you like she's terrified to breathe wrong. The next few seconds were a scuffle, some kind of noise, a thud, maybe him knocking something over. Then silence. And finally her voice cold and calm. No one will believe you. They never do. The recording ended. I stared at my screen for a long time. That file was dated 6 weeks before he died. My father knew. He tried to intervene. And now I couldn't stop wondering. What if he didn't just die? I tried to convince myself I was spiraling. That grief was making me paranoid. But the file was real. And when I looked up his death certificate, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. He died in his sleep. No toxicology report was filed. My mother was the one who found him. I called Alex my cousin, not my ex. He's a pathologist. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. Liv, he said, confused. What's going on? I need you to help me understand something. If someone dies in their sleep, and the spouse doesn't request an autopsy, could something be missed? There was a pause. Technically, yes. Especially if the person's over 50 and has a prior diagnosis, they'll list cardiac arrest and move on. What if that person had no serious heart issues, no major symptoms, and 6 weeks before they died, they confronted their spouse about emotional abuse and surveillance? Dead silence. Olivia, Alex said carefully, What are you trying to tell me? I'm telling you, I don't think my father died naturally. I think my mother was driving him crazy, and maybe worse. Another pause. Do you want me to pull his records? I did. But I also wanted to scream, to punch a wall, to cry into my daughter's stuffed rabbit like a child. Because now it wasn't just about Ella, or me. This went deeper. It was generational, patterned, perfected. Judith had learned how to create a story, a version of events, a timeline. She'd rewritten my childhood, turned my therapy into sound bites, and possibly erased the last witness to her truth. I stood in front of the mirror in my bathroom and stared at my face. I looked like her. That realization gutted me more than anything. I looked like the woman who made me doubt my own mind, who recorded my most vulnerable moments like she was collecting specimens, who might have killed my father by silence, manipulation, or worse. And she still smiled at me in every family photo. But not anymore. It was time to rewrite the story. Not hers, mine. The moment I decided to fight back, my mother beat me to it and filed for emergency custody of my daughter. If you've ever felt like someone tried to weaponize your pain against you, leave a comment with, "So I know I'm not alone." And make sure you hit like and subscribe because this story only gets darker from here. I didn't even get the chance to confront her. After I listened to the audio of my dad's voice after I spent the night crying in the bathtub with the lights off, I decided I needed answers. Not just theories, proof. I wanted to talk to someone who remembered the last few weeks of my father's life, someone outside of Judith's orbit. I remembered an old name from my childhood, Tom Heller, my dad's best friend from college. He'd come to our house often when I was younger, always with a six-pack and a story. After Dad died, he disappeared. I was told he moved away. But I found him, still in the same town just on the other side of the lake, still listed under Thomas Heller Accountant, still very much alive. I called him. At first he was hesitant. "I'm not sure I should be talking to you, Olivia," he said. "Things got messy after your dad passed." That was all I needed to hear. I asked if we could meet, just for coffee, just to talk. He agreed, but only if it was private. "I don't want Judith knowing," he warned. "She made it very clear years ago that I wasn't welcome in the family anymore." That night, I arranged for Ella to stay with Chloe, my best friend, and planned to meet Tom at 10 a.m. the next morning at a quiet cafe. But Judith must have known, because by 9:12 a.m. I was served. A woman in a beige blazer with no expression knocked on my door. "Are you Olivia Caro?" I nodded. Ella was in her pajamas, sitting on the couch with her cereal. The woman handed me a manila envelope. "You've been named in an emergency petition for custody. Your court date is in 48 hours. What I croaked. The woman turned and left, just like that. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a motion filed by Judith Caro, my mother requesting temporary guardianship of my daughter Ella, citing mental instability, emotional neglect, verbal abuse, documented history of concerning behavior supported by recordings and witness statements. Attached were 3 audio transcripts, all edited, all lies. I read the first. "I can't do this anymore, Ella. I don't want to be your mom today." Claimed to be from a recording 2 months ago. It was fake. It was spliced together from 2 different moments. One where I was talking to Chloe, exhausted from back-to-back meetings. Another when I jokingly told Ella we were switching roles and she was the mom for the day. I never said that line. Not like that. Not in that tone. The second transcript quoted me saying, "I should have given her up for adoption." That never happened, ever. But the final one broke me. It claimed I'd threatened to harm myself in front of Ella, a total fabrication, taken from a therapy session recording never meant to be public, where I had admitted to once having intrusive thoughts during postpartum depression. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Judith wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to erase me, to replace me. My hands were shaking as I called my lawyer. "She's filing an emergency motion," he said, shocked. "What's the claim?" "She says I'm unstable and abusive. She submitted audio proof." "You told me she was recording you." "Yes, and now she's weaponizing it." He paused. "Do you have proof it was edited?" "I'm working with a cybersecurity expert," I said quickly. "She's compiling a forensic report." "Good, but we'll need more than that." "Like what?" "Like witnesses. Like testimony. Like someone who can stand up and say you're a good mother." I wanted to scream. I am a good mother. But suddenly, in a courtroom, that didn't matter. What mattered was what people believed. And Judith, she was an expert at manufacturing belief. I canceled the meeting with Tom. I couldn't risk being away from Ella, not even for a second. Then I called Chloe. "I need you to testify," I said. "About me. About how I am with Ella." Chloe didn't hesitate. "Of course. Liv, I've seen you parent through exhaustion, heartbreak, everything. You're the most present, loving mother I've ever met." I burst into tears. Over the next 36 hours, I built a defense. Rachel compiled the forensic analysis of the audio files, highlighting timestamps, waveform inconsistencies, and metadata showing spliced audio. Chloe wrote a statement. So did my therapist, Dr. Harris. My cousin Alex agreed to testify that my father had raised concerns about Judith's behavior before his death. I barely slept. Then came court. The room was cold. The judge wore reading glasses and didn't look up much. Judith sat across the aisle in a pearl necklace and pastel sweater looking like the cover of a sympathy card. When asked why she was filing, she delivered her performance. I love my granddaughter dearly. Olivia's been under immense stress. I've tried to be supportive, but her emotional state has become unstable. I'm worried for the child's safety. She dabbed at invisible tears. Then she handed the court the audio files. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, he said these files are doctored. We have proof of manipulation and a forensic expert ready to testify. The judge raised an eyebrow. You're saying the petitioner submitted false evidence? Yes, Your Honor. The judge called for a recess. Judith looked at me then for the first time in weeks. Her expression was flat, like none of this mattered, like she already knew how to spin it. But I was done being spun. I whispered to myself, You tried to take my daughter. Now I'm going to take your mask. She wasn't just trying to take my daughter. She was planning to erase me financially, legally, and emotionally, years in advance. If someone you trusted has ever plotted behind your back while pretending to protect you, drop A in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. This story is just starting to expose how deep generational betrayal can go. The custody hearing didn't end that day. The judge postponed the ruling, said both sides had serious claims, and he needed time to review the forensic report Rachel provided. That meant no immediate ruling, no emergency guardianship granted. Ella stayed with me, for now. But Judith's eyes as we left the courtroom told me she wasn't done, not even close. That night I couldn't sleep again. I kept replaying the judge's face, his frown when he listened to the recordings, and his expression when Rachel explained how the waveform distortions showed audio tampering. He believed us mostly, but the law moves slow, and Judith. She moved like a ghost, fast, quiet, always 10 steps ahead. I sat at my kitchen table at 3 a.m. drinking chamomile tea. I didn't even want scrolling through old emails, texts, anything that might give me leverage. And that's when I remembered something odd. 4 years ago, right after Ella was born, Judith had insisted on opening a savings account for Ella's future. She said it was for college or emergencies, a family trust, she called it. I never saw paperwork. She said it was just a baby account, harmless. I let her do it. Now I realized I'd never asked where that account was, or who had access to it. I texted Rachel. Olivia, is there a way to check if someone opened a bank account in my daughter's name? Rachel, only if you're a legal guardian and you can prove identity. Why? Olivia, I think my mom opened one. I need to know if she's using it for more than savings. Rachel, send me Ella's SSN and birth certificate. I'll run some checks in the morning. I hesitated, then I sent it. The next day, Rachel called me while I was picking Ella up from preschool. Her voice was tense. Liv, I found the account. My heart dropped. And it was opened 4 years ago, like you said. But it's not just a savings account. It's a custodial investment portfolio, set up under your mother's name as the custodian. What does that mean? It means she controls it. She can deposit or withdraw technically on behalf of Ella. But you have zero oversight unless she grants you access, which she didn't. I pressed the phone tighter. How much is in it? Rachel paused. Over 112,000. My breath caught. How I whispered. Smaller monthly deposits, over years, mostly cash transfers. But here's the disturbing part. A lot of those deposits are labeled as support for Olivia Caro. Like rent help, grocery reimbursements, therapy funding. My blood ran cold. She's been hiding money in Ella's name, I said, while telling people I'm unstable and financially dependent. Exactly, Rachel said. She's crafting a narrative where you are the irresponsible one. And she's the one making sure Ella's future is protected from you. I felt like the world was spinning. It made sense now, all of it. The false therapist quotes, the recordings, the court motion. She didn't just want to take Ella out of my custody. She wanted to become Ella's sole guardian and trustee. She was preparing for a future where I was gone, irrelevant, institutionalized, discredited, or dead. I nearly threw up right there in the preschool parking lot. That night, I requested official documentation from the bank. Rachel helped me file a request for full access as Ella's legal parent. It would take days, maybe weeks, to get through the red tape. But I wasn't waiting around anymore. I drove straight to Judith's house. I hadn't been there in nearly a year, not since the last fake birthday dinner where she told everyone I couldn't make it because of an episode. The lights were on. Her car was in the driveway. I didn't text, I didn't knock. I rang the bell and stared into the Ring camera. She opened the door within seconds. She looked surprised, but only for a second. Olivia, she said with that same syrupy tone she used on judges and PTA moms. What a surprise. I assume this isn't a social visit. I held up the printout Rachel had sent me. Want to explain how my daughter has a six-figure account in her name funded with money you claimed I needed when I didn't? Her smile didn't break. I've always provided for my family. Forgive me for caring about Ella's future. You forged donation receipts. You submitted fake reimbursements. You've been laundering your lies through my daughter. Judith's eyes narrowed. I've done what any responsible grandmother would do when her child can't be trusted. There it was. I snapped. You lied to everyone. You made me think I was losing my mind. You isolated me from my own father. And now you're trying to rewrite Ella's life to erase me from it. She didn't deny it. She just tilted her head and said, "You were never meant to find out this way." And in that moment I saw it. No shame, no regret, just disappointment that I'd figured it out too soon. I turned and left without another word. As I drove home, shaking Ella asleep in the back seat, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a fight for custody. It was a battle for the narrative of my existence. And Judith had already spent years writing me out. My father died 6 years ago. But this week he spoke to me from the grave. If you've ever felt like someone was trying to warn you, even from beyond, leave a comment with, so I know I'm not alone in this. And if you've made it this far, hit like and subscribe. This story isn't just about family, it's about truth, and what it costs to finally see it. After the confrontation at my mother's house, I barely slept. I kept checking on Ella every few hours, as if I expected Judith to come creeping through the window like some suburban ghost. I even installed 2 new security cameras, one facing the front porch, another watching the hallway outside our bedrooms. But even then I didn't feel safe. Because safety isn't just about walls and locks, it's about trust, and mine had been shattered at the root. I was 2 days into complete emotional burnout when I got the message from Aunt Carol, my dad's sister. We hadn't spoken in years, not because of a falling out, but because Judith had slowly drifted my father's side of the family out of our lives. Claimed they were toxic, judgmental. I believed her, for too long. The message was short. "Olivia, your father left something for you. I've held on to it for years. I think now is the time." I called her immediately. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, Liv." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I was wondering when you'd finally call." We met at a quiet coffee shop just outside town. She looked older, softer than I remembered, but her eyes, blue like my dad's, were the same. She didn't waste time. From her tote bag, she pulled out a small metal box. Scratched, old, and clearly worn. Taped to the top was a sticky note in my father's handwriting. "Only open if things go dark." I didn't know what to say. "He gave it to me 2 months before he died," Carol explained. "He told me Judith was watching him, that he couldn't trust what would happen if he tried to give it to you himself. He made me promise to hold it until the right moment." "And this is it," I whispered. She nodded. "Your lawyer called me. Said you might need a character witness about Judith's past." That's when I knew. I took the box with trembling hands. Inside there were 3 things. A USB drive. A folded handwritten letter. A copy of a bank statement, one I'd never seen before. I unfolded the letter first. It was dated just 6 weeks before his death. "Olivia, if you're reading this, it means things have reached a place I prayed they never would. I'm so sorry. I wanted to protect you while I was alive. But Judith, she's not who she pretends to be. I spent too many years letting her control the truth. I watched her isolate you, gaslight, you reshape your memories. I thought I could counterbalance it with love. But love without truth isn't protection. It's a cage with flowers. I've recorded some things, saved emails, notes, conversations. They're on the USB. I know she'll spin her story, but I wanted you to have mine unedited. There's also money, a separate account in your name created before Judith could touch it. The account is under your birth name and the trust ID I used for your college fund before she took that over. It should still be active. I don't know how this ends, Olivia, but if you're reading this, it means you're still fighting, and that's all I could ask for. I love you, always. Dad, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the page. The idea that he'd been preparing for this, not just fearing Judith, but knowing she would eventually turn on me, it cracked something open in me. This wasn't just a mother trying to help in the wrong way. This was long-term psychological warfare. Carol placed a hand on mine. He was scared, Liv. He said she had cameras, microphones, that she doctored things even in their marriage counseling sessions. He tried to get out, but every time he got close, she'd corner him with emotional blackmail. "I think she killed him," I whispered. Carol didn't flinch. So do I. The bank statement showed a modest but untouched trust, $87,000 under my name, with my dad's old accountant under a shell company I never knew existed. It was my money, hidden from Judith, hidden from everyone. Rachel helped me access it within 24 hours. It would be enough for legal defense for therapy for relocation if I needed it. It was my financial life raft. And the USB, that was a bomb. Inside were dozens of recordings. My father's journal entries dictated in audio format. Emails he BCC'd to himself. Video files showing Judith interrupting him mid-sentence correcting his memories. One file caught her deleting messages off his phone unaware he was screen recording. Another showed her rehearsing conversations in the mirror, practicing crying, practicing sounding calm, practicing how to say I'm worried about Olivia with just the right tremble. She had been crafting this persona for years, polishing it, perfecting it, and now she was turning it on me. I backed up the drive 3 times, uploaded copies to secure storage, sent a copy to my lawyer, one to Rachel and one to Chloe for safekeeping. My father hadn't just left me a lifeline. He'd left me a blueprint of who she really was. And now I had everything I needed. But I also had one more problem. Judith knew I was getting close. Because 3 hours later, she showed up at my door with a court-appointed evaluator. When she showed up with a court-appointed evaluator, I realized this wasn't about family anymore. It was war. If you've ever had someone try to paint you as the villain in your own story, leave a comment with, because you're not alone. Like and subscribe if you've ever had to fight for people to believe your truth over someone else's performance. I was folding laundry on the living room floor while Ella played with her stuffed animals when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart thumped once loud and wrong. I checked the peephole. And there she was, Judith, standing on my front porch, perfectly dressed, holding a clipboard. Next to her, a tall woman with a neutral expression, a leather satchel, and the clinical posture of someone trained to stay above emotion. I opened the door but didn't move aside. Olivia, Judith said with a practiced smile. This is Ms. Keene. She's been assigned as the evaluator for our custody hearing. I thought it would be helpful for her to see your home environment. My mouth went dry. No call, no notice, no warning. This was a surprise evaluation, a psychological tactic straight from Judith's playbook. I don't recall scheduling this, I said tightly, stepping into the doorframe like a shield. Ms. Keene spoke for the first time. Your mother filed a request for an emergency visit. The judge approved an expedited home check. I'm here in an observational capacity. I looked her dead in the eye. You know this violates protocol, right? Her expression didn't change. I'm just here to observe. Behind me, Ella called from the hallway. Mama wears Bunny's hat. Judith's eyes sparkled like she'd won something. I should have said no. But if I refused entry, I knew exactly how she'd spin it. She was hiding something. She was unstable. She refused cooperation. So I stepped aside. Fine, come in. They walked into my living room. Ella peeked around the corner and immediately froze when she saw Judith. Grandma. Her voice was uncertain, cautious. Judith knelt like she was on stage. Sweetheart, I brought you a new puzzle. It's got kittens. She pulled a shrink-wrapped box from her tote and held it out like an offering. Ella didn't move. Ms. Keene took slow notes on her clipboard. I crouched next to Ella. It's okay, love. Why don't you go pick a book to read? Ella nodded and bolted down the hallway, abandoning Judith's puzzle gift on the rug. Judith stood brushing imaginary lint from her slacks. She's always a little shy, she murmured with the perfect touch of maternal concern. Especially when things are tense. I wanted to scream. But Ms. Keene was watching every blink, every breath. Instead, I offered tea, kept my voice level, explained our daily routine, walked her through the apartment. She asked a few generic questions about Ella's sleeping habits, her school routine, her social life. Then she asked, have you ever yelled at her? I blinked. Of course, I've raised my voice. I'm a single mom with a toddler, but nothing inappropriate. Judith clicked her tongue softly just once. Ms. Keene made a mark on her paper. I felt my throat tighten. Then came the kicker. Have you ever expressed regret about being a mother? My blood turned cold. She had the audio. Judith had sent it, or recited it, or twisted some out-of-context therapy quote into a poison dart, and now it was in the evaluator's hand. No, I said. Never. Even in moments of stress. I met her gaze. I've had bad days, but I've never regretted Ella. Judith interjected sweetly. Sometimes trauma distorts memory. Olivia's had a lot on her plate. My head snapped toward her. You don't speak for me. Ms. Keene scribbled again. I felt myself unraveling. This was the plan all along, force a visit. Gaslight me in real time, make me lose composure under pressure while she performed calm, collected concern. But I wasn't the same girl she trained. I stood up. Actually, I said to Ms. Keene, I have something to show you. I walked to my laptop and opened the folder titled JPC Archive. Judith Parker Caro. I clicked on a video, dated 6 months ago. It showed Judith in her own home muttering to herself in the mirror, practicing. She's just under so much stress. I think Olivia's always struggled with boundaries. I'm not saying she's dangerous, but Ms. Keene's brows furrowed. I hit pause. I played a second file audio from my dad's laptop backup. Judith's voice sharp and cruel. She'll believe whatever I tell her. She always does. You think anyone's going to listen to the unstable one? Ms. Keene blinked. This, I said, is the person you're evaluating as a concerned family member. She's been monitoring my home for over a decade. She edited audio files to build a false narrative. My father tried to expose her before he died. I have forensic proof, and it's been submitted to the court. I handed her a printed copy of Rachel's report, and another my father's handwritten letter. Ms. Keene didn't say much after that. She wrapped up quickly, thanked me, said she'd review the evidence thoroughly. Judith walked to the door stiffly. She paused on the threshold. You're making a mistake, Olivia, she whispered. You don't win by turning family into enemies. I stared at her. No, I lose when I let enemies pretend to be family. She left without another word. And for the first time in years, my apartment felt clean. But I knew it wasn't over. Because people like Judith don't lose quietly. They implode. And the fallout was coming. She knew I could fight lies. So she found someone who knew my truths and twisted them into a weapon. If you've ever had someone twist your own vulnerability into ammunition against you, comment with, and hit like and subscribe if you believe that surviving betrayal doesn't make you bitter, it makes you dangerous to manipulators. 3 days after the evaluator left, I got a letter by certified mail. No return address, no note inside, just a single page of legalese. Intent to pursue defamation charges. Alleged damages to character and social reputation. Accusing me of slander, false accusations, and public misrepresentation of a family member's mental health. I stared at the page in disbelief. She was suing me, or more accurately, threatening to sue to intimidate me into silence. The attached document included a statement, a declaration from a key character witness prepared to testify on Judith's behalf in both the custody hearing and any civil proceeding. My throat went dry when I read the name. Dr. Karen Linton, my former therapist. Not the one I currently see. Not Dr. Harris, who has fiercely defended me. No, this was the therapist I saw years ago during my worst period after Ella was born. I hadn't seen Dr. Linton in over 4 years. We parted ways awkwardly. She was clinical, cold, but professional, or so I thought. And now she was aligning herself with Judith. Why? I forwarded the documents to my attorney and Rachel immediately. Rachel called within minutes. Liv, we've got a problem. What kind? I scanned the metadata. The declaration, it wasn't written by Dr. Linton. What? It was generated from a Word doc authored on a device registered to your mother's iCloud. The file name was literally Therapist Statement Revised. My stomach dropped. So she forged it. Rachel hesitated. It's worse. The original version embedded in the doc's history had comments like, "Tone this down or she'll sound too biased." Another line, "Make Liv seem unstable, but not dangerous." Jesus Christ. She's scripting witnesses now, Liv, or impersonating them. I called Dr. Linton's office. The receptionist said she was on extended medical leave. My lawyer filed an emergency injunction to block the statement as evidence until authenticity could be verified. The judge agreed, but the damage was done. The court had seen the letter, and even if it was eventually tossed, the seed was planted. Olivia's own therapist doesn't trust her. Judith didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to make me look uncertain, unstable, confused. It was diabolical and deeply personal, because no one else had ever heard what I told Dr. Linton in that office, about how I used to walk the halls at night with Ella, whispering apologies for not being enough, how I once broke down crying at a grocery store because I forgot to buy wipes, how I sometimes wondered if my daughter would be better off without me. All words spoken in grief, in pain, in healing, and now rewritten, twisted, used against me. Chloe came over that night holding pizza and wine and no judgment. She read the forged declaration, then the forensic breakdown from Rachel. She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she said, "This is psychotic." I know. No like textbook manipulation. This is Munchausen by proxy level Sut. I laughed, but it came out broken. "Why me?" I whispered. Chloe didn't flinch. "Because you got out. You didn't become her. You didn't carry her brokenness. You started healing, and that threatened her." I sat on the floor and cried into my hands. I had tried so hard to be the better daughter, the forgiving one, the loyal one. But now I saw that forgiveness meant nothing to someone who needed control more than connection. Judith didn't want peace. She wanted possession of Ella, of me, of the story. And she'd do anything to own it. Even rewrite therapy notes, even impersonate a doctor, even frame me for what she knew I feared most, not being a good mother. I spent the next morning digging through old documents. I found an intake form from Dr. Linton's office. Her official signature. Rachel compared it to the one on the declaration. Forgery confirmed. We submitted everything to the court. My lawyer called it deliberate fabrication with intent to mislead. The judge didn't dismiss the case, but he requested a third-party psychological assessment of both Judith and me. She'd overplayed her hand, and now she'd have to sit in the same hot chair she tried to strap me into. I knew she'd prepare, she always did, but I wasn't the scared daughter anymore. I was a mother, and she had just declared war on the one thing I loved more than life. She once told me I was too emotional to be believed. During her psych eval, she used that exact line about me. If you've ever had someone twist your fears into a narrative to discredit you, leave a comment with, so I know I'm not the only one who's lived it. And hit like and subscribe if you believe that sometimes surviving isn't enough. Sometimes you have to fight back on their turf. The email came Monday morning. Subject court ordered. Psychological evaluation schedule location. Emerson Clinical Center. Evaluator Dr. Ellen Cho, forensic psychologist. I was up half the night before, sick with anxiety, imagining Judith sitting across from a stranger and charming them into believing I was unwell. Again. Dr. Cho would evaluate both of us back to back. 1-hour interviews, no audio, no video, just notes, body language, and psychological profiling. I wore a plain navy blouse, no makeup, and pulled my hair back. I wanted to look neutral, grounded, like a woman with nothing to hide. When I arrived, Judith was already in the waiting room. She was in pearls, of course, a soft lavender sweater, light makeup just enough to say I take care of myself, but I'm not vain. She glanced up from her magazine, smiled. "Good luck, dear," she said, sweet as poison. I didn't answer. They took her first. I sat alone in the hallway with my nerves crawling. I paced. I memorized the motivational posters. Healing begins with truth. Trust the process. An hour later, she emerged. Her smile hadn't moved. Dr. Cho called my name. I stood, palms sweating, knees locked. We sat in a room with pale blue walls and a box of tissues on the table between us. She asked me about my childhood, my parents, my relationship with Judith, my mental health history. I told the truth, the whole messy, vulnerable truth. I told her I'd battled postpartum depression, that I'd struggled with anxiety, that I'd seen therapists, cried in grocery stores, Googled "Am I a bad mom?" more times than I could count. But I also told her how I showed up, how I fought to rebuild myself, how I never missed a parent-teacher conference, how I tucked Ella in every night with her favorite song, how I'd spent the last month not defending my ego but defending my daughter's right to grow up free. Dr. Cho nodded, took notes, asked follow-ups, then closed her notebook. "Thank you, Olivia." I went home and tried not to spiral. A week passed, then 2. Then the report arrived. My lawyer called. "I have both evaluations," he said. "Want me to summarize?" "No," I said. "Send me the whole thing." He did. I read mine first. It was fair, honest, acknowledged my anxiety, validated my recovery, described me as emotionally aware, self-reflective, and strongly attached to her child. A section noted long-term psychological erosion due to covert familial manipulation. Dr. Cho even referenced the forensic audio and declared it credible evidence of deliberate narrative shaping by a third party. I sobbed. Then I opened Judith's. At first it read like an Oscar campaign. Warm, articulate, invested in family values. Emotionally composed, though reports past difficulty with an oppositional daughter. Expresses concern over daughter's ability to model emotional regulation for a child. But then came a phrase that made my stomach turn. Dr. Cho noted, when asked to describe Olivia's behavioral changes over the years, subject replied, "She's always been too emotional to be believed." I stopped breathing. That line, those exact words, they weren't just dismissive, they were surgical. I had heard them before in therapy, not from Judith, from my own inner voice. Because Judith had said them to me once when I was 15, and sobbing after she canceled my birthday party without telling me. She'd stood in the hallway and said, "God, Olivia, you're so emotional no one will ever believe you when it matters." I remembered the sting of it like a slap. And now here it was, decades later, weaponized in a clinical setting, repackaged to undermine my credibility to the one person who mattered. But it backfired. because Dr. Cho followed that quote with an observation. Statement appears rehearsed and was delivered with a flat affect. Raises concern for manipulative narrative control, particularly in contrast with documented evidence of psychological interference. My hands were shaking. She had seen through it. Finally, someone saw it. Judith wasn't just overbearing, she was calculating, predictable even in her pathology. She used repetition, tone, key phrases, the same lines she'd used on my father, on me, maybe on others. But she'd gone too far. She'd slipped. She couldn't not say the line that had worked so well for years. And that was the crack. The report recommended continued maternal custody with no indication of psychological instability that would jeopardize the child's well-being. Judith's statement had helped me, because for the first time the system didn't just hear her voice. It recognized her pattern. I sent a copy to Chloe, to Rachel, to Aunt Carol, to anyone who ever doubted me. And when I picked up Ella from preschool that afternoon, I looked into her face so open, so unguarded, and whispered a promise into her hair. You will never grow up believing your truth needs permission. But it wasn't over. Because that night I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in 10 years. And it changed everything I thought I knew about my childhood. Everything I thought I remembered about my childhood. It wasn't real. Because the woman who gave birth to me wasn't supposed to. If you've ever uncovered a secret so big, it split your identity in 2, comment below because you're not alone in that freefall. And hit like and subscribe because this chapter is the one I was never supposed to tell. The message came at 9:46 p.m., a simple subject line: I think I knew your mother before you were born. The sender was a name I hadn't heard in over a decade, Elena Marsh. She was my mother's college roommate, the one whose name Judith always dismissed with an eye roll and a vague insult. She dropped out, she once told me. Got pregnant, ran off with some musician, unstable. But her email was calm, precise, unshakable. Olivia. I've debated reaching out for years, but someone I trust forwarded me a blog post you wrote about surviving psychological abuse. I recognized the patterns. Judith wasn't always like this, but she was always controlling, especially when it came to you. The truth is, I was with her when you were born, and I'm not sure she was supposed to be your mother. I blinked at the screen. What the hell did that even mean? I replied instantly. Within minutes, she responded. We set up a Zoom call the next morning. I barely slept. Chloe came over and stayed the night just in case I woke up screaming. I didn't, but I did lie awake staring at the ceiling like it might tell me the truth Judith never had. The next morning, I clicked into the call. Elena's face appeared, older, worn, but kind. She didn't waste time. I was your mom's roommate in college, sophomore year. We were close until she got pregnant. I swallowed. Wait, you mean with me? She nodded slowly. I was there the night she took the test. She didn't cry, she didn't even flinch. She just said, this is the clean slate I need. And then she cut everyone off, moved out, transferred schools, deleted her social accounts. I shook my head. I never knew any of this. I figured, Elena said. She was obsessed with image even back then. She told people she got married, young, had a baby by choice. But there was no husband, and no father on the birth certificate. I stared at her. Do you know who he was? She hesitated. That's the part that's haunted me, she said. Because, Olivia, I don't think the baby was hers to begin with. I felt my entire body go still. What do you mean? She volunteered at a small women's shelter just outside campus. She kept a journal. I read it once when she left it open. She wrote things like, she doesn't deserve it. That girl's not ready. That baby will have no chance with her. I thought she was venting, but weeks later she left school and came back with a baby. You. My chest felt hollow. I thought she adopted. No court records, Elena said. No paperwork. I looked, I was confused. One day she just had a newborn, told everyone it was hers, but something was off. I couldn't breathe. Are you saying I might have been stolen? I don't know for sure, she said, voice trembling. But I know she lied about everything, and she guarded you like a possession, not a child, like someone who always expected to be caught. The floor fell out from under me. If Judith had done what Elena implied, then none of my life, my name, my birth date, my identity was real. I wasn't just manipulated. I was built on a lie. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. I didn't know who to tell. I was 20. And by the time I found the courage, it was too late. She'd moved, changed her name, buried her tracks. I closed the laptop, walked into the bathroom, stared at my face. What else was fake? The blood in my veins, the stories she told me about how she rocked me to sleep, the photo album with my name scrawled on baby pictures. Was that even me? I pulled out the safe box from under my bed, the one labeled birth certificate and essentials. I looked at the document for the 100th time. Judith Caro, mother. Father. Place of birth, a clinic that no longer exists. A P.O. box address. No attending physician listed. Just a rubber stamp from a registrar who retired 20 years ago. How had I never questioned it? Because I trusted her, because I needed to believe someone wanted me. But now, I wasn't sure if she ever had. I called Rachel, told her everything. She was silent for a beat, then said, "Liv, if this is real, it's not just emotional abuse anymore. It could be criminal." I didn't care about the legal part. I wanted the truth, because deep inside me something cracked, and the Olivia Judith raised started dying. In her place, someone new was waking up. Someone angry. Someone ready to know who she really was. And Judith, she had no idea that the daughter she built out of lies was about to burn it all down. I thought finding out I might have been stolen was the end of the story, but it was just the beginning, because I wasn't the first. If you've ever uncovered a secret that rewrote not just your life, but your family's legacy, drop A in the comments. And hit like and subscribe. You won't believe what I found buried just beneath my own name. The day after my call with Elena, I called in sick to work and began the hardest search of my life. I had one goal: find out where I came from. Not just the clinic listed on my birth certificate, which no longer existed, but who might have known Judith in the months before my birth. Rachel and Chloe helped. We built timelines, tracked old addresses, pulled archived public records from counties Judith had lived in during college. We found a hit. In a 1991 community bulletin from a women's shelter outside Columbus, Ohio, where Judith supposedly volunteered, there was a staff roster. One name stood out: Marie Langston, age 17, listed as temporary resident in April of that year, the same month my birth certificate claimed I was born. My hands trembled as I traced the name forward through census data, change of address records, Facebook profiles. It took 2 days, but I found her. Marie Langston Diaz, lives in Arkansas, mother of 3, runs a hair salon, and according to a 2022 blog post about trauma healing, she once surrendered a child under duress. I emailed her. I told her I believed I might be her daughter. It felt impossible, audacious, cruel even. What if I was wrong? But her reply came just 2 hours later. "Olivia, I've waited 33 years to hear from you. I always wondered if someone would come knocking. I prayed you were okay. Yes, I think you're mine." The words shattered me. I called her. I needed to hear her voice. She was crying before I even said hello. "I was 17, she whispered. Pregnant, terrified. My parents kicked me out. The shelter took me in. That's where I met Judith. She was nice at first. Kept bringing me tea, asking questions. She said she used to be a social worker. I thought she wanted to help." My throat tightened. She told me I wasn't fit to be a mother, that my baby would be taken anyway, that I could make it easier by giving her to someone who could raise her right. "You mean to her?" I said, voice hollow. She never said that directly, but she offered to handle the process. Said she had legal friends. Told me I could disappear and the baby would be safe. Marie paused. "I never signed adoption papers. One night, I woke up and you were gone." I couldn't speak. She continued. "The shelter told me you were placed with a family, but they wouldn't give me names. It was all whispers, shame, red tape." I looked at my reflection in the window, stunned. All this time I thought Judith had just controlled my narrative. She'd created it. From scratch. "I don't want to make things harder for you," Marie said softly. "But if you want proof, I kept something. A lock of hair, the wristband they gave you in the hospital. I even did a DNA test a few years ago just in case." "I want a test too," I said, immediately. We both submitted our samples to a private lab Rachel recommended. While we waited, I started unearthing the second bombshell. Chloe had been helping me dig through the archived forums from women's shelters, old message boards, Yahoo groups, hidden blog pages. That's when she found a post from 1994. A user called Butterfly842 wrote a desperate message. "If you were at Fairview Home in spring '91 and had a child you didn't keep, please reach out. I think something happened to my baby. A woman named Judith used to visit. Tall, brown hair, told me she could help me start over. I haven't stopped having nightmares." We traced that handle to an email address. Dead end until Rachel found it linked to a now-defunct GeoCities blog. That blog had been archived. In one post from 2003, the user described a terrifying story. A woman had shown up at her shelter under the guise of volunteering, befriended 3 young women. All 3 had babies. None of them ever saw their children again. "Do you think it's a pattern?" Chloe whispered. I stared at the screen. It wasn't a pattern. It was a blueprint. Judith hadn't just taken me. She may have done it more than once. We had no hard proof yet. No court records, no paper trail, but the whispers were there, the cracks in her timeline, the unexplained disappearances, the fact that my father had once said, "She rewrites history, even mine." And now she was trying to rewrite Ella's future. The DNA results came 5 days later. 99.98% match. Marie Langston Diaz was my biological mother. I cried for an hour. Then I called her back. She asked if we could meet. I said yes. Judith had stolen a child from her and an identity from me. But now I wasn't just Olivia, the daughter she groomed into silence. I was Olivia, survivor of abduction, daughter of a mother who had never stopped mourning me, and mother to a child I would never ever let go. Judith didn't just create a lie. She committed a crime, and I was finally ready to bring her down. People say blood is thicker than water, but they forget so is poison. If this story has reminded you that sometimes truth is the most dangerous weapon, leave a in the comments. Like and subscribe if you believe family isn't who you're born to, it's who fights for you when the lies fall apart. I printed every page of evidence: emails, journal entries, message board archives, my DNA report with Marie, audio recordings from Judith's manipulation, even the screenshots from the baby monitor, the ones that started it all. The documents filled 2 binders. The truth had taken years to bury. I needed something physical to hold it all. I delivered them in person to my lawyer's office. We were filing for a legal name change, but not just that. We were also initiating a petition to open a criminal investigation into Judith Madsen for child abduction based on Marie's sworn affidavit and DNA results, document forgery, identity fraud, and custodial interference for what she attempted with my daughter Ella. My lawyer, Karen Monroe, had been quiet as she read through the material. But when she closed the binder, her eyes were red. "We're not just going after a name," she said. "We're exposing a pattern. If we can verify even one more case like yours, we might be looking at one of the most elaborate family-level abductions I've ever seen." It felt surreal, like I'd been living inside a fiction novel, only it was real, and I was the main character and the evidence. Chloe helped me prepare emotionally. "You know she'll deny it all," she warned. "She can try," I said, but this time I brought receipts. Rachel found a podcast host who specialized in exposing coercive adoption, institutional abuse, and underground trafficking from the 80s and 90s. They were interested in my story, in telling it. I agreed, but not until after the court hearing. It was a public hearing, family court, a name change case, simple on paper. But when we walked in, the judge was already flipping through the documentation we'd submitted. Judith had been served notice but didn't show, which was fine, because I didn't need her permission anymore. After reviewing our petition, the judge leaned forward and said, "Ms. Diaz, I commend your clarity, your documentation, and your bravery in pursuing a path to reclaim what should have always been yours. Your name change is granted. From this day forward, you are legally Olivia Langston Diaz." I cried. I signed, and I walked out of that courtroom feeling like the ghost of my stolen childhood had finally been named and laid to rest. The fallout was swift. Judith didn't go quietly. She never would. Within a week of the court decision, I got an email from an unknown address. Subject line, "You've ruined everything." The message was short. "Your new mother won't love you like I did. You'll come crawling back when you realize who really raised you." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to Karen, my lawyer, then blocked the address. Judith had lost control and she couldn't stand it. But her fear wasn't just emotional. It was legal. Because 2 days later, a detective from Family Crimes called me. They had opened a formal investigation into my case. And they had questions for Judith. I didn't press charges for revenge. I did it because I couldn't sleep knowing she might have done this to someone else. Because if she could erase one mother's voice and steal her child, she could have done it again. And again, and again. In the weeks that followed, we received tips from 2 women who heard my story on the podcast. Both described eerily similar situations from the same shelter Judith had volunteered at. One woman had even gone to the police in 1995 but was dismissed for lack of proof. Now she had backup. She had me. As for Marie, we met 1 month after my name was changed. We picked a neutral place, a coffee shop near her home in Arkansas. I spotted her instantly. Same eyes, same nervous half smile. She stood up and we hugged like we'd known each other in a dream we were finally waking up from. She brought photos, letters she'd written to my baby every year. She never mailed them, never knew where to send them. I brought Ella. Marie cried when she saw her. She looks just like you did, she whispered. We sat and talked for hours, and when we stood to leave, she took my hand and said, I don't want to rush anything, but I'd like to be part of your life. Whatever you're comfortable with. I'd like that too, I said. And I meant it. Ella and I moved. New place, new city, closer to Marie. Rachel and Chloe came for the housewarming. Alex even visited. My circle had grown, and it was one I chose. I still have bad days. Days where I wonder what parts of me are real and what were planted. But I have this photo on my fridge. It's Ella on my lap, Marie on one side, Chloe on the other, Rachel making a goofy face in the background. And I look at it and think, this is my family. Made from truth, not lies, not manipulation, truth. So, 6 months after the court date, I got one final message. A handwritten letter, no return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Judith. Inside was a single line. You think truth saved you, but truth is lonely. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just burned the letter, because the truth did save me. It gave me my mother back. It gave Ella a future not built on secrets. And it gave me something Judith never wanted me to have. Freedom. The freedom to see, to choose, to rebuild, to love without surveillance. And most of all, the freedom to finally sleep knowing the monitor is off. For good.